I discovered things like 1% of VC funding is going to women. That's got to be wrong. Then I discovered that women were only winning 13% of business awards and that women over 50 appear in less than 4% of media globally. If you're over 50 and you go looking for a job, your chances of finding it are pretty slim. The stats say 18 months to look for a job, and that you'll probably take 20% less salary. We're not going to be able to get those senior roles anymore. There's a hell of a lot of women who don't have children, and they may be sitting on a nest egg of a whole lot of money, but they're lonely. And there's a whole loneliness epidemic that we're not really talking about.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness, and the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Dion Payne, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. My name's Dion Payne, I'm your host today, and I'm joined in the studio by Jules Brooke. Let me tell you a little bit about Jules. So Jules is a speaker and coach around visibility. She's the founder of Handle Your Own PR, She's the Boss, and Australian Women Speakers. She's the Boss is her current focus and is for women business owners over 45. The group runs online and offline events nationally. She hosts podcasts, she has a YouTube channel, and a directory of women-owned businesses. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you so much, Dion. It's great to be here. You know, I love everything you're doing, so it's awesome to be invited onto your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to have you here as well. And you've been such a great supporter of what we've been doing at Women for Homes. Now, I also know that you've been doing a lot in terms of supporting women in business. And I'd love to know a little bit about your story and what got you into this space in the first place. Because it's not really something that you go to your careers advisor and say, I want to run a group called She's the Boss.
No, it isn't. That's a really interesting question, because I have been teaching PR for 15 years through my business Handle Your Own PR, and I actually am the opposite of you. I'm not very good with numbers, and I actually did some analysis which kind of shocked me in the first place that I'd done it, but secondly that I discovered that I had been working 90% with women through that whole 15 years without realising it. And I'd always thought, God, I'd love to just teach women, and did that whole, but you know, what about the men? I'll be turning back, and I don't want to be seen just focusing on women. So I did that for years. And then in 2019, I saw a post on LinkedIn from a guy saying, I'm looking for people to interview. I'm starting a new TV channel. And I thought, how cute. I bet he's in his little back room at his mum's house. I'm going to put my hand up and say I'd be up for an interview. Turns out that he's the ex-bureau chief from Sky Business. The channel was called Ticker News, which is now quite big. And he was just starting out. We hit it off really well. And he said, basically, between the jigs and the reels, as my mother said, I said to him, I would love to have a show on my own show And I would love it to be about women in business because I never see really women in business on television. And I said, I know we have the Janine Alice's and the Naomi Simpsons and the Melanie Perkins, and you can literally on one hand list the name of the well-known businesswomen in Australia. Where are all the rest of the women? Where are those role models for young girls that have fat women and thin women and ethnic women and, you know, whatever, just the whole full spectrum of women who are being really successful in business? So I actually went into that Facebook group that a lot of your listeners may know called Like-Minded Bitches Drinking Wine and said, I'm going to do a show about female founders. What should I call it? And somebody in that group said, She's the Boss. And I loved it, took the name, started running the show. And on the back of that, I started finding out, I did interview a couple of people that had done research, and I discovered what was going on with women in business, which is that we are so not being given the opportunities that men are, is probably the best way of putting it. Put it this way, I've got 3 brothers who are very successful entrepreneurs. I've got 3 sons. I'm surrounded by men. And so I kind of, you know, assume we're all equal. And then I discovered things like 1% of VC funding, so venture capital funding, was going to women. That was the first one that kind of kicked me off. And I went, that could be wrong. That's got to be wrong. Then I discovered that women were only winning 13% of business awards, and that 27% of radio voices are women, and that women over 50 appear in less than 4% of media globally. And the list just goes on and on. 1% of history books feature women leaders. All this kind of stuff. And I went, oh my God, I didn't know any of this was happening. My show got canned because of COVID, and I started interviewing people at home. And then I did the podcast. Then I started running, at the beginning of lockdowns, I'd started running online lunches for women who were running businesses around Australia. And I kept that going, and then it turned into in-person events. So that's kind of how She's the Boss grew. In terms of why do I do what I do, it was discovering, it was a few things. One being I turned 50, and it's like, I talk about this with a lot of women, it's like a switch goes in your head and you suddenly stop caring what anyone else thinks about you, and you just start going, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to do it. So I just thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start connecting women, and I'm going to encourage them to make themselves far more visible so that we have those role models for younger women. And that's kind of where it all started. Then I discovered that 76% of women business owners are over 45, which you never hear about. You would assume that the bulk of them were in their 30s, and they're not. They're in their 50s. And so I went, well, I'm going to actually put a stake in the ground and say this is a group for women. I said 45 plus. I would actually say probably 50 plus. And I've just registered the Old Girls Network as a name and a domain, because I'm going to start a group for women 60 plus to help them give back to younger women. So there you go.
Oh, that's so cool. And when you say that the bulk of women over 55 that are business owners, and I think you said 78%, was that right?
Something like 76% are over 45, yeah.
So why do you think that is?
I'm pretty clear on the fact that I think there's a number of reasons. One is that I basically started my businesses riding that mumpreneur wave, which was a very big thing at the beginning of the 2000s. Women started having children and not wanting to go back to work, or couldn't go back to work in the same way because the flexibility wasn't there. And on the back of that, those women, if we were all 30 then and I was one of them, are all 50-something now. So that's part of it. Secondly, I think it takes time and money and experience to go out on your own. And then a big thing I think that is really driving what I see as a wave of entrepreneurship for women over 50 now is ageism in the workforce. And so I think that there's a lot of women who are either feeling that their job might need a bit more stability, or that maybe there is a redundancy on the horizon, or people are just starting to go, well, you're that age, and, you know, they're starting to go, oh my God, what's going to come? But the reality is that if you're over 50 and you go looking for a job, your chances of finding it are pretty slim. So the stats say 18 months to look for a job, and that you'll probably take, I think it's something like 20% less salary than you had before. So not only are you looking for ages, but you're not going to be able to get those senior roles anymore. I mean, and the whole thing is so ridiculous, I can't even tell you how stupid I think it all is. However, what I see it as is a huge opportunity for women to start their own businesses or work with somebody else who started a business, often with impact. So I did a survey recently of nearly 400 women over 50 running businesses, and overwhelmingly the reason they're doing it is for impact reasons and legacy reasons. And I get that. And so the other interesting stat was that a huge percentage of them, like, I don't know, let's say 40%, want to keep working past 70, which really shocked me as well. But then I thought the reason for that, I think, is firstly there's money, but it's also driven by, if you are doing something like you're doing, Dion, with wanting to help women solve the homeless problem, the homelessness problem for women, it's not kind of a job in the same way that anything else is. You have a passion behind it that says, this is not work, this is something that is driving me, and I want to keep doing it until I can't do it anymore, or until the problem is solved. And I think that is a big part of it as well. Plus, let's be honest, I mean, I'm about to turn 60. The idea of what a woman is like in her 50s and 60s is just so changed from even a generation ago, that we're very dynamic, we're healthy, I feel like I'm 35, so why would I want to give up working and doing things where I can build on all the connections and the experience I've had in my life, and hopefully have a bit of impact at the same time?
Yeah,
sorry,
cool.
That was a very long answer.
It was, but it was good. And when you were speaking then, it made me think of a dear friend of mine that I saw yesterday, and I almost fell over when she said, will you come to my 70th birthday? I've never looked at this woman as 70. I've never looked at her at that age. She's just beautiful, vibrant, young, fulfilled, and it seems like she's having her best life, actually.
I actually feel like there is something in the wind, and I noticed it post-COVID, so I don't know whether the pause helped everybody sort of sit in the moment a bit and think about themselves, but I actually think women over 70, I'm coaching a woman who's about to start her third business at 70. She didn't even start a business till she was 55. And she sold the other two businesses. But now she wants to work with women over 50 that aren't sure whether they should start a business. So, there's a lot of us out there that I think are recognising that this is an opportunity, that women, it's not just in Australia. I've interviewed lots of women around the world. It's happening everywhere. That women are saying, we're not old at 50. We've got a lot to give, and let's support each other and actually make some of that change happen that we've been waiting 40, 50, 60 years to see happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that waiting for change to happen and then it not happening, it's almost like you've got to take matters into your own hands, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, who is going to care about this as much as the women that are facing it themselves, Yeah. In terms of what you're doing, who is going to relate to it more than women age 50 who are either facing possible homelessness or don't have much super and are wondering what they're going to do, or the women that have friends or family members that are like that. So I see that this is a movement that we can solve a problem. We can actually solve it, and we shouldn't be leaving it to the government or to men to solve it, because it's not one that relates to them in the same way.
Exactly. And, I think, I look at this and think it starts really young. I was at a friend's house a couple of weekends ago, and my friend has two really beautiful children, a young girl and a young boy. And I did this myself with my children, so there's no judgment at all. But the books that we were reading were all the sort of princess books where there's a man who comes and rides on his white horse and saves the day, and and it's like I sat there reading it thinking, oh gosh, I'm probably a bit more feminist than I was when I first had my children, and it just prompted me to take another look and just go, oh, I don't know about this actually.
Well,
it seems like it's setting us up for a fall.
Yeah, and a lot of the women in finance will talk about how having a man ride in on a white steed is not a financial plan, basically.
No.
As much as you might love the idea that someone will come along with a whole big pot of money and offer you this great life, it's kind of really for us to make it happen for ourselves.
Absolutely. So you mentioned about your survey. What inspired you to do the survey, and what were some of the other findings that you got as a result?
If you've been watching the news lately, it's easy to feel a sense of despair. Between power-hungry global leaders and absolute chaos and division, it can feel like things are spiraling out of control. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and just to have a sense of powerlessness. But there is a way to push back. We can stop looking at what they are doing and start looking at what we can do. At Women for Homes, we firmly believe that where we put our money is making a choice for the kind of world that we want to live in. Our mission is powerful: to mobilise 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030, whilst being financially empowered along the way. It's practical, it's tangible, it's something that we can do now, and it's something that we can do to take our power back. Join us at www.womenforhomes.com. That's women4homes.com.
Okay, I decided to do the survey because I had been talking to a woman from COTA, which is the Council for the Aged, and she was telling me that they have a whole lot of stats on women 70 plus and 80 plus, and that those women, they weren't even asking them anything about business because they just assumed they were in aged care or, whatever. And I was going, that's just not my experience at all. And she said, well, we haven't got any stats to back it up. And if I went to the council to ask for some funding for maybe a survey that we could do, there's not going to be any money available because they don't see it as an issue. And I thought, well, I can do it. I've got all these women in my group. So I just pushed one out there. When you do it, I'm not great at surveys, and I did it and thought afterwards, I wish I'd asked other questions. But anyway, the questions, some of the interesting things that I got out of it, and you're really putting me on the spot because I haven't looked at the results for a few months now, but the one thing that really struck me was that the majority of the women were running businesses that were earning under 100,000 or giving them 100,000. So they're kind of running a business that's a job and doesn't give them the freedom that I'd love to see them have. And also that maybe for whatever reason, a lot of them were thinking small. And I'm a big fan of, why not be Australia-wide? Why not go global with what you're doing? The other thing that was, why did you start a business, and the legacy thing was, I also wanted to prove that because I have seen some stats that say women around the world are running 50% of the social enterprises. And that's my understanding and my experience of women as well, is that they really do want to give back as part of it. And so I wanted to be able to prove that was, part of what the motivation was for women. And then the last thing kind of shocked me was that I thought that women would be wanting to work through till maybe 65 or 70, but I was shocked by the number of people that said, I'll do it till I die. And there was a research that came out at roughly the same time called the Hilda report that showed, it wasn't just about women, but it showed that people of both sexes over 60 had no intentions of stopping working till their 70s. And I just thought, well, let me just go and let's go right down the woman route and just find out what else they're doing and why they're doing it. And flexibility was definitely another reason. And those are the things I think that women, that we want to be able to juggle our family, we want to be able to see the family, but we want to be able to have impact. And another thing I've sort of been talking about with women is I'm like, what's going to happen to the men? Because all the women that I'm talking to over 50 are kind of like, right, I'm going to go traveling, I'm going to go and live with other women, I'm going to cut my hair and dye it blue, whatever it might be. I'm going to go and start dabbling sexually in a different area, whatever. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen to your partner? And they're like, well, I don't know. They don't seem to be doing anything. And I was like, I feel like there's this movement of women going, this is the second half of my life and I'm absolutely going to kill it. and I'm really excited by it, and a whole lot of men going, when I retire, I'm going to hang out with my wife and play golf. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do when your wife's not around?
And I mean, I think about how the sort of the traditional sense of what happens in your, after 65, after you've retired, is that, there's the grandparents, and the grandparents are supposed to be there for the grandchildren, and all of that. But then I also see that there's challenges around, because of the housing shortage or housing crisis. Often it's women in that, what we call the sandwich generation, where they're looking after their younger, they're looking after their parents, and they're also looking after their adult children as well in some way, and contributing in some way. And so I'm kind of seeing that the traditional idea that we had may actually just not be possible. And there's the part of this that is the impact in staying and working until you're in your 70s. But part of it is just the demands, the financial demands that are on society at the moment as well.
Yes, and then I would add to that we're talking about family. There's a hell of a lot of women who don't have children, particularly from my generation down. Our parents all got married at 23 and had 2.5 kids, but in my generation we were all after university and travel and experience, and a lot of people missed out on having a partner and don't have children, and nobody's talking to those women about what they want. And they may be on a nest egg of a whole lot of money, but they're lonely. And there's a whole loneliness epidemic that we're not really talking about when it comes to the housing issue that I think that Women for Home solves, which is, I don't want to be on my own staring, talking at the wall like Shirley Valentine did, and we've got this society that says, we all have to own our own houses, and then when our partner dies, we stay there, or we sell it and move into aged care. I think both of those are pretty horrible solutions. I like the idea of hanging out with the girls, and we'll look after each other, and the guys I always joke and say, I want to live with a whole lot of women, and our partners can come in and service us when we feel like it, and then and then we'll just go back to hanging out and drinking margaritas every evening.
Oh, that's a vision.
It is.
And I mean, the other thing that collides with all of this, that we're talking about ageism, we're talking about housing crisis, we're talking about women over 50 and all of that. Menopause, that seems to be something that's been quite a theme this year. I've never really picked up on it, maybe because I'm in perimenopause myself and it's been very present. But in your community, in the She's the Boss community, are many people talking around that and the impact that menopause is having on work and what that looks like for the future?
Not around work, because most of us are self-employed, and I've got my own opinions about all of that. However, the whole menopause thing, you're right, is on everyone's lips. Everyone's talking about it. To me, a little bit like it's a disability of some kind, and it's just a life process. But anyway, we've got menopause coaches, we've got menopause experts. I've just come back from a retreat in Bali with a whole lot of doctors and allied health professionals, and they were all talking about menopause. Everyone's talking about menopause and perimenopause. How that's affecting people at work, I really don't know. I know that the corporates are kind of on alert, and that there's a lot of people going into corporates to talk about how to manage women with menopause, and women are asking for menopause leave and all sorts of things like that. But it's definitely a thing, and it's something that's being talked about, and I think that's important, because I know when I was 47, I went to my local book club with a whole lot of women that were about 3 or 4 years older than me, and they were all talking about perimenopause, and I'd never even heard of the term before. I was like, I don't even know what it is. But I mean, it's being talked about all the time. But I would argue that when you get your period, things change as well. And, when you have babies, things change. I mean, I don't know that personally, I just wonder whether we need to be focusing on it as much as we are. But, it is what it is. And it definitely is affecting some women a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my experience and what I've seen in terms of people that I've spoken to is that, okay, I'll talk about myself, but initially it kind of just hit me. I'd been hearing people talking about it for a while and feeling like it was some kind of club that I didn't have entry to.
Like the Mothers Club is another one.
And then it happened, and sort of starting to get the symptoms. And in the first instance where I wasn't really sure what was going on or really sure what to do, it was quite debilitating. But then got it handled, and then now. Well,
we are women. We're very good at just muscling through, particularly if we've got kids, because you can't really indulge yourself and take yourself to your bed and say, come and feed me peeled grapes because I can't get out of bed, to our children. But I also think perhaps we haven't been talking about it that much because our parents' generation were not working, and it was something that didn't maybe affect them in the same way because they'd pretty much all retired. I think it was 55 was the age of retirement until I hit my 20s or so. Now it's like 65 for women. So it is definitely that 10 years that we would have been at home, we're now at work if you want to get the pension. So it does. It definitely affects you, but we go through a lot of stuff physically, women, with our hormones and all the rest of it, and nothing really stops us. So I don't know why this has become such a big topic for everyone to talk about, but my old business partner used to go, God, you're so Victorian in your values, Jules. And it wasn't geographical Victoria. It was like historically, honestly, you just live in the past. And I think, maybe I do.
I'd love to take you back to what you said about the women in the survey, where basically earning less than $100,000 in their businesses. That seems to me like it could potentially be a problem. Maybe women are happy with that. Maybe in terms of flexibility, that's okay. But where do you see there's the issue with that, and what would be some steps that you recommend that women could take to increase their visibility and increase their earning capacity?
Well, okay, so one of the things that I talk to, when I talk with women and they're not earning much, I'm like, why? And they go, no, firstly, it is the flexibility thing. It's also, there's an imposter syndrome for a lot of women around business that's sort of a bit weird, whereas men just go for it. I think women go, don't know whether I really want to manage anything huge, don't know if I would know how to grow it. So there's a bit of reluctance there. But look, I think we have a responsibility as women to make ourselves more visible. I think we need role models. There is some great stats that has been done last year and during COVID that say girls 11 to 16, when surveyed, say they cannot see women in the roles that they would like to have when they grow up, or women like them, who like they're going to grow up to be, doing sort of roles like that. So I feel like we have a responsibility to the next generation to try and be as successful as we can be as well. How can they do it? Well, the first thing is if no one knows you exist, then you're not going to be able to get a whole lot of clients and customers. Secondly, a lot of women think hyper-locally. So they're thinking about what can I do to serve my local community, which is a finite market. There's only so much money you can make and so much you can do in a small market. I think with the internet and online businesses now, there's actually no reason why you shouldn't go global. I'm a huge fan, as you know, of LinkedIn, and I'm always teaching people to get on LinkedIn because that is very much a global community. And, you can get jobs overseas, you can make friends overseas, etc., etc. But what do women need to do? Well, they need to just plan it, work out what they want to do, and then find someone to probably... look, I created She's the Boss because there are stats that say it makes a huge difference if women have other women backing them. And I think that you need to go and find a community of people who also want to grow their businesses, because it's very, very hard. Even in my social circles, I'm the only one really running a business and wanting to grow it. Most of my friends are thinking about retiring now. So you need to find those other women that are the same as you, because then you'll all inspire each other. So I think that makes a massive difference as well. I also acknowledge that running a business isn't for everyone. but for the ones that are going to be bored, and I look at retirement and I'm like, I couldn't just do nothing. I just couldn't do nothing. And I watch my friends who are retiring now, and they go travelling and it's all exciting for a couple of years. And then suddenly, what are you going to do? You've done a whole lot of travelling. All your friends are not working as well. Everybody's growing old together. Where's the injection of young ideas and fresh ideas and things like that? So, so I think it's really important to work and stay, but work it to the hours that you want and doing the work that makes you bounce out of bed in the morning. That probably for me is more important than anything else. And if you do that, then it's easier to think about growing it. If you're just doing a little side hustle and you're doing an MLM, whatever, like a sort of an Arbonne or a whatever, or you are doing a little part-time job on the side, maybe that's enough for you. But but the reason that women don't earn a lot of money, I think, partly is because we can't access funding. So I think that's a big part of it. We don't get that cash injection that would take your business to the next level, or it's very hard to tap into that cash injection, particularly, for instance, if you're not running a tech startup. So tech startups there is a lot of funding out there. All the VCs and all the investors are kind of going, oh, technology, AI, fantastic, we'll put money into that. But for instance, a networking group like mine is not very attractive for investment, and yet I think, well, that's going to have a big impact on a whole lot of women, but people don't want to invest in it in the same way. So that's another thing I think that stops women, and historically, and how women can grow is through partnerships and collaboration. It's through partnering with other people who have similar values and similar markets that they're attacking, and doing something together where you're both helping each other to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Jules, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on the podcast today. God. It's been a real pleasure. And it's an interesting space to be in, and I'm fully behind you. Women supporting women is such a powerful force to be reckoned with, and getting this right is just absolutely paramount to sorting out some of the challenges that we're seeing that are facing women in the world today. For anybody that would like to be part of She's the Boss, how can they get hold of you?
Right, well, go to she'sthebossgroup.com, and kind of everything is on there. If you want to get hold of me personally, I would approach me via LinkedIn. I am a LinkedIn fiend. I love it. That's where I can go and check you out first to see whether I want to chat to you, it's all that kind of stuff as well. And people can check me out and go, oh, I'm not sure whether I really want to be talking to this woman. But me personally, I'd say LinkedIn and she'sthebossgroup.com, and you can click on join and it tells you our membership options. I do run international retreats too, and I'm doing that more and more because I love the idea of taking women out of the country to go and have a holiday, but also make friends and talk about business and get a bit of distance from their own business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jules. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, an absolute pleasure from me, and thank you for doing what you're doing, Dion, because Women for Homes is so, so important, and I couldn't support you enough. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.